Welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight we have the Knights of Columbus. We have representatives of their college and youth outreach. We have Father John Kalish, Thomas Peretta, and Chris Cantanaro here to talk about this great outreach they have among our youth and on college campuses. Talking a lot about service work tonight and the great work that they're doing out in that mission field. And welcome, Father John Paul.
Good to be here.
Doug couldn't make it in, weather problems with the plane, so we have Father John Paul standing in. And I thought for this opening segment, we would talk, I think it ties into the topic tonight about service. Pope Francis, back at the end of the close of the year of faith, he gave an address to volunteers, and he talked about the importance of faith and how it motivates our life. And he said faith is a cornerstone, it's the inexhaustible wellspring of all our actions, you know, in family and work and parish and with friends in different social situations. So faith, we cling to God, transformed, that drives us in these different works. And even in moments of difficulties and sufferings, he says, it is then that the Christian allows himself to be taken into God's arms and that he clings to Him with the assurance of entrusting himself to a love as strong as an indestructible rock. Right? The Christian, I love that aspect of entrusting ourselves to God by faith. Isn't that a beautiful theme?
Yeah, I mean, Pope Benedict opened up the year of faith with Porta Fidei, that letter, the door of faith, that, you know, like he says, everything depends on that act of faith. And, you know, so many people think of faith as a feeling. You know, do I feel like I have faith because I feel like my faith is strong? But faith is much more than a feeling or emotion. It's a virtue. It's a power. And faith comes from God, you know, the theological virtue. It's infused into us at baptism. And it ends in God. It has its end, its telos in God. And it's not so much about, you know, whether I feel like I have faith. You know, we could feel like we have faith, but, you know.
We have to walk in darkness too.
Yeah.
We say it's a human act and it's a gift, right? Given to us by the sacraments, and it's also something we act upon with conviction. And he says part of that thing that faith drives us to do, it says when we live it deeply, when we live it personally, it makes us missionaries. It makes us want to proclaim the gospel far and wide. It is faith that makes our communities missionary. Indeed, we need Christian communities committed to a courageous apostolate that reaches people where they are, even in the most difficult situations. He talks about an openness that faith gives us, right? Because we're clinging to God, we're adhering to, you know, first of all, we speak of faith as this personal adherence to God. And when we do that, we take on the mind of Christ, we open ourselves to others, and it drives us, right? As the Son was sent into the world, so we are sent. And this is what I really wanted to highlight tonight. He says, open yourselves to those whose lives are poorest in faith and hope. We speak a lot about poverty, but we do not always think about those who are poor in faith. There are many. There are many people who need an act of human kindness, a smile or a true word, a witness by which they may grasp the closeness of Jesus Christ. May this sign of love and tenderness, which is born from faith, be lacking to no one. So we hear a lot about service and working with the poor and everything, and he's talking about those as well who are spiritually poor.
Yeah, I remember a priest saying that kindness has done more for the upbuilding of the kingdom of God than all learned and teaching all put together. And, you know, for us that are teachers and priests that are preaching the gospel, if it's not done in kindness, then you know, it's like a resounding gong. Right.
He says a smile, a word, a witness, a true act of human kindness. And yeah, you think about our world that, you know, we're connected a lot of times digitally and through screens and virtual reality worlds and things. But we all need that human contact. We need a human face. We need that kind of FaceTime, so to speak. And that's so important in our witness to the faith, to make time for people, to smile. And I know Pope Francis's words are challenging, right? He's rousing the church, and he's trying to get us active and motivated. He tells the young people in Rio to shake up the world. You know, I want you to shake things up. And that can be intimidating, but when I read things like this too, it's like, well, who around you needs some help? Now, maybe there's a brother in my community. Maybe there's someone in your family. Maybe there's friends at your parish or school that need some outreach. So, you know, we all enjoy a little personal attention and kindness. So as Christians, we're called to do that and to share the faith. Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with the Knights of Columbus. So don't go away. Back in a moment. Welcome back. We're joined by Knights of Columbus, all four, including Father John Paul's a knight. And we have Father John Kalish, Thomas Peretta, and Chris Canataro. And Father John, I wanted to start with you. You're the director of the chaplains for the Knights.
Yep.
And tell us about the history of the organization, the Knights of Columbus.
Sure. So 1882, we're in the middle of central Connecticut, New Haven. And it's a time when the church is still being persecuted, and the Catholics that are there are primarily immigrants, mostly Irish, some Italian, some German there, and many of them were discriminated against in terms of their jobs. And so they're working in the mines and on the railroads, dangerous jobs. And Father Michael J. McGivney is a young priest who'd been ordained 5 years. He's 30 years old. He's the vicar of the parish there, and he recognizes that the young men are not coming to Mass. And so he gathers together some of the older established men of the parish, and he asks them, what can we do? How can we form a community to reach out to the young men, to help them to maintain their Catholic faith? Because there was a temptation for them to join some of the other social organizations that were anti-Catholic, also to get ahead in their work and in their jobs. And as part of the Knights of Columbus, of the formation from the very beginning, it was also, how do we help the widows and the orphans and the children of the Catholic men who have died. And so from the very beginning, it was a fraternal benefits society. Today we would call it an insurance company, where members would join. They would contribute a certain amount of money, and the promise was when you died, your widow, your orphans would be cared for and not be sent off to an orphanage or forced into poverty. So from the beginning, it was an evangelization method for the young men of St. Mary's Parish with a global dimension. Father McGivney named it after Christopher Columbus, who at the time was the greatest Catholic American hero, and with the idea that it wasn't just for the Irishmen of St. Mary's, but that it would sort of take up in the other parishes as well.
And I like that because it parallels today. Our young people go to college, they're faced with a lot of ideas contrary to the faith,
Yep.
a lot of temptations. And so the idea is to come together, form a group, practice the faith, exercise our faith, and grow.
That's right. And so from the very beginning, it had that sort of missionary dimension, which was to reach out to the men who aren't attending, but also to how do you build up the men who are here? How do you help them to live their lives as Catholic men, as men who are leaders in their families? Interestingly enough, in 1882, Father McGivney saw it as a lay organization. And so he refused to become the head of the organization and said, no, this is a leadership model for laymen. So way ahead of the times.
So the Grand Knight, Supreme Knight?
Supreme Knight, Carl Anderson today. Yep.
Is Carl Anderson,
That's right?
So he's a doctor, right? Retired doctor?
He's been a professor of theology and philosophy. That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Author, and he's really out there and kind of cutting edge and mover and shaker, so it's a great witness.
Yep.
And one thing we want to break down tonight too is sometimes we might have a stereotype of the Knights as just being for older men. I was telling you guys, I remember playing with my grandfather's sword in his closet.
Sure.
And but it's not just for older men, is it, Thomas?
No, it's not. No, for over 100 years now, we've had outreach to college students, starting in 1910 at the University of Notre Dame, and now we have over 300 college councils. And they operate the same as any of our Knights of Columbus councils, but they serve the parish community on college campuses.
So that's the only difference between the The youth councils?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, their year is structured a little differently based around the majority of the membership is made up of college men, and then some professors attending the university as well. And but their primary mission is service to the parish community and the needs of the men, and building them up in the faith.
Right. And there is one thing I was interested in is any kind of mentorship going on with the older knights and the young ones. Does that happen at the councils?
Certainly. Our councils are spread throughout the United States and Canada, and a large part of that is the local councils in the area mentoring the college men in the ways of the Knights of Columbus and how to run a council. Chris is with us, and he's in Washington, D.C., which has a large portion of its membership made up of college knights. We have three councils, three Knights of Columbus councils there in D.C. that are on college campuses. And so they've been a large part of the mentorship and the growth and leadership of these young men through these 4 formative years. And for me as well, I joined in college, and it was the local council in Hampton that came and initiated us into the Knights of Columbus, taught us how to run meetings and how to run service events, and how to reach out and to promote our good works.
And you turned around and started on your own college, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was invited by Father John to attend a session on Knights of Columbus, starting a men's group on campus.
So Father John was a chaplain at your
He was
school?
the chaplain at Quinnipiac University in Hampton, Connecticut, yes. And went to this info session. I was not really practicing my faith, going to Mass occasionally, particularly on the weekends that my grandmother called to check on me. So I attended this session. I got this invite from this priest that I knew on campus, so I went, and I liked what I heard about service and about fraternity. And I identified positively with my Catholic faith and heritage, so that really led me back into active practice of my faith on campus, and then service, which in turn changed the man that I was on campus as a college student.
And you told me earlier about part of your service was helping your grandfather.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, my grandfather was the man I knew as a Knight of Columbus growing up. So certainly a lot of men know their grandfathers. Father John Paul and I were sharing our stories of grandfathers as those are the men they think about as knights, and certainly they have a lot to give to the church in time and witness. But for me, when I would come home from school, a lot of my responsibility was to take my grandfather to Mass. He was the usher at the noon Mass at my local parish, and we would go week in, week out, and really his witness of service at that parish, after having served my mother and my aunt in their own illnesses, was the strong witness of faith that I saw through him. And for him, it was every bit a part of being a Catholic gentleman and a Knight of Columbus.
Right. And I think maybe Father John, you could talk about this too, that it seems so often we can draw our young men into the faith, sometimes beginning with service, right? That appeals to men.
I think for men, part of our spirituality is active. So we do things, it's by doing things together that we grow in a certain camaraderie. And so whether it's going out and helping out in a soup kitchen or playing a game of basketball, which was how I was introduced to the Knights of Columbus, from that you have a deeper bond. And then that can lead us to going to Mass together, praying the Rosary together, sharing ultimately our faith at a deeper level. So I think that invitation to belong to something and do something together as men not only gives a powerful outside witness, but helps us to grow internally, personally strengthens us in our own leadership and witness of the faith.
And I think this is a timely show because Pope Francis is really shaking the tree and trying to get the church to go out to have this evangelical witness that means not just preaching but service. That's right. And especially those on the margins. You know, in Evangelium Gaudium he speaks about a fraternal communion that's needed, that should also give a witness to charity with great joy and attraction. Right. And that of course is what we all want from living the gospel of life and showing that. But I think the Knights of Columbus is one organization that men can join and then invite others to kind of come together, because in the end we're not saved individually. We're saved by belonging to a community, which is the body of Christ. And the Knights can be one way to help men to live that out in their lives. And I think that's a great point about helping, because the Knights have this great structure and a great history, a great momentum of service that our young men in college and high school ever can join in. And as you say, grow in being a real gentleman, and having these real solid virtues, gentlemen in the best sense of the word.
In Rio, Pope Francis gave a great speech about the Beatitudes and also about the elderly. And throughout his speeches, he continues to bring up the elderly and their great witness and value to us and what they have to teach us. And again, I think at times our own model, especially to youth, can simply be overly focused on their needs, which are very important, but to be able to tie them, the body of Christ is from the young to the old, and so to be able to put that together, that witness is very important. And I think the Knights are one way that that can be shown.
Right. Well, let's bring Chris in. You're a junior. What school are you studying at?
I'm at Georgetown University. I'm studying accounting in the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown.
At Georgetown. So you hope to go to law school?
I do. I hope to go to law school upon commencement.
And you, at your young age, you are a Grand Knight, is that right?
Yeah, I'm the Grand Knight at Georgetown University Council.
And how many members are there?
There's about 70 of us undergrad members, and we also have about 20 to 30 alumni from Georgetown that are still retain membership in our council.
Okay. And tell us about some of the activities you all do.
Sure. I like to divide them first into our service projects and then into our fraternal and spiritual. My favorite service project that we do is called Great Patrol. We partner with a Anglican parish in Washington, D.C. We get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and take a van that Georgetown University gives us access to feed the homeless in Washington, D.C. It's really powerful to talk to the people on the margins themselves. We also build housing, or help reconstruct housing, I should say.
Well, let me stop you. That's called the Great Patrol?
Great Patrol, because the people that are on the streets tend to sleep on the grates of Washington, because that's the only place they find warmth during these cold winter nights.
Now, how do you guys get the motivation to get up at 5:30, you said?
It's tough sometimes, I won't lie, but I think we all know that the witness we share and the food we provide is something that so many people in Washington depend on. And I think this dependence on us to sort of live out our faith and to do charity that evangelizes is so important and so vital.
So you make sandwiches.
We do. On Tuesdays, all of the campus ministry groups at Georgetown come together in what's called Hoya Court, which is essentially a food court, and we make sandwiches, and each day, typically the Knights of Columbus will deliver these sandwiches to a local soup kitchen right near campus.
Okay. And you also do, you were saying about housing work, hands-on housing?
It's called hands-on housing. We partner with a local parish, and there are many dilapidated houses in the Washington area, and we try to repair those, volunteering our time on weekends, so that there can be more affordable housing for those that can't afford, Washington, D.C. housing.
Okay, and other service projects? Is there?
We do. My favorite, as I said, was Great Patrol, but one that at Georgetown we feel very partial to is what we call a diaper drive. We go to local supermarkets and we beg the patrons of those supermarkets for diapers to benefit the Northwest Pregnancy Center, which was founded by Georgetown alumni. It's a crisis pregnancy center in Washington, D.C.
So patrons going into the grocery store, you stop and say, can you pick us up?
A pack of diapers, whatever you can afford, and it's going to help mothers that choose life. And you'd be surprised how many people in the Washington metro area are actually partial to that and do, in fact, donate these diapers.
And you connect it directly to the life issue? And
we are. We run one of the actually the largest student-run pro-life conference in the country, the Cardinal O'Connor Conference. We actually had our 15th conference this past January.
Right. That's the largest student-run
pro-life conference. Yes, it's the largest in the country. This year, Professor Robert George from Princeton was our keynote speaker. In previous years, we've welcomed Archbishop Chaput from Philadelphia, Professor Helen Alvarez from George Mason, and many other intellectuals of the pro-life and Catholic movements.
I don't know how to ask this question, but do you think all this service work makes you more attractive for marriage?
I certainly hope so.
Because I just had the image of the diapers. You said you like filled your house with
We
them.
filled our house with diapers, and one of the administrators walked into our house, and they said, "Who's having a baby?" They were just
Preparation.
confused in preparation.
Yeah.
We had enough diapers for everyone that lives in my house to have 10 kids, I guess. At
But
one point.
I would think some of the women would say, "Hey, that's a family type guy." You know, that would be attractive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think some of the people do.
All right.
I think
So,
Father and I can speak to that. Certainly, I think I'm the benefit of the ministry and the man that I became through work in the church and campus ministry in the Knights of Columbus. It certainly was my entryway into that.
right.
But before that, on campus at Quinnipiac, there was a women's group that prayed for Catholic men on campus to be a witness for strong men that would be good husbands and fathers and friends on campus first and foremost. And out of their prayer, I really feel that Father can attest to this, that the Knights of Columbus on campus was born as well. And my own fiance was a part of that women's group when she came to
wow.
campus behind me. And I wouldn't be the man that I was throughout that ministry and throughout their prayers. So.
We're going to let Father John respond to that, but first we'll take a break, and we'll be back in just a minute. All right, welcome back. And that last story we were talking about, I think, highlights the primacy of grace, right, in the Christian life, that it begins with prayer and our union with God. So, Father, you got these women to get together and pray.
Sure.
And a
So
council formed?
I've helped to form 3 college councils during my time, and often it's been both at Quinnipiac and at Dartmouth, where I was chaplain, the women's groups that existed first, their recognition that they wanted strong Catholic men who were faith-filled in their lives. And where they saw lack of it, they would get together, and as part of their weekly meetings, they would pray for that. And so I think the fruits of their prayer and their grace are even some of our Knights of Columbus councils. And I think where our councils are very successful on the college level, like at Georgetown, there's a great complementary group of young Catholic women who, again, all of our Knights activities are open to anyone except for the meetings are just for members only. But often our college councils will partner with their local women's group and with other members of the campus ministry to do their activities. I think that's a key component of our college councils.
And when you told me that, it sounded very Dominican, too, because St. Dominic started with the women's community
That's right.
first.
The women that he preached to, that he converted, became our cloistered nuns first, and their mission then became to pray for his evangelization efforts and the start of the friars.
Right. And then, Thomas, you married, or you're engaged?
I'm engaged to be married, this year.
To one of the women that was in...
Yeah, her name is Allison, and she's a nurse. She was 3 years behind me in school, and I would say that the first 3 years of college, through joining the Knights of Columbus and the campus ministry, definitely, as we were saying, made me, I think, is part of the attraction, she would say.
Yeah.
I don't think if I was the man I was my freshman year, that would have been as attractive and really been transformed through that grace and those actions.
Well, these are like all elements we talk about seemingly every week on Life on the Rock, fellowship and community coming together. But at the heart of it, certainly a real spirituality. I know, Chris, you talk about the spiritual works you all do, and I was impressed by that. Tell us about some of those activities.
Sure. My favorite spiritual activity at Georgetown partners both spirituality in Mass and then having a fraternal dinner. It's called our House Mass and Fraternal Dinner. Father Francis Schemmel, who was a chaplain in residence at Georgetown, a Jesuit, who retired from his chaplain duties, had a wooden altar that he constructed himself, and he donated it to the Knights of Columbus. And in our house we have Masses twice a month, and one of the brothers will cook for the entirety of the council, which is a really great event to bring both fellowship and spirituality together.
So you live in your own house just off of campus?
We do, a
Yeah.
couple blocks away from
Yeah.
campus.
So that's a great fellowship. And then you also have a daily mass on campus?
We do. We have a 10 p.m. Mass in Copley Crypt Chapel, which is a small, quiet space.
And this is for all of Georgetown?
This is for
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
this is for all of Georgetown. But three of my brother knights, Joe, Kieran, and Michael, last year decided that the attendance at the nightly mass just wasn't high enough. They wanted to really increase it, and one way they thought would be good would be to bake goods for after mass. And so our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night masses at 10 p.m. will feature baked goods ranging from brownies to corn muffins to, you know, cupcakes, whatever it may be. And it's something that the Knights really inspired and still continues today. I went to mass last night before I came to Alabama, and there were 50 people in the chapel.
Wow.
Both the Knights of Columbus and our sister organization at Georgetown, the Catholic Daughters. Just really an inspiring thing for me.
Uh-huh. And then you also do basketball? That's a good...
Sure. On Wednesday night, we have a program called Masketball, where we go to Mass at 10 p.m. and then after Mass we go to Yates Fieldhouse at Georgetown and we play a pickup game of basketball. Obviously, going to Georgetown, basketball is pretty important to us. So the team may not be doing as well as we were hoping this year, but basketball is going strong at the very least.
Right. And I like that fraternal meal, and you told me something earlier that struck me. You said that men are looking for a place to call their own, that kind of...
Absolutely.
Place, yeah.
I went to St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia, which is an all-guys Catholic and Jesuit school. And the prep really instilled a sense of brotherhood in me. I'm an only child, and when I graduated the prep, I left with 1,000 brothers and an alumni network of brothers. And I came to Georgetown, and I was hoping to find that same thing, that same fraternal spirit, that same brotherly love, if you will. And I walked into my dorm, and I saw a sign saying, "Come to Mass with one of the upperclassmen" on the first Sunday of the year, and I decided I'd go to the 7:30 p.m. Mass, which I now coordinate at Georgetown. And I met the senior, a Catholic daughter, the regent of the Catholic Daughters, which is the head of the community. Her name was Allison. And we went to Mass, and after Mass she said, "Chris, you should join the Knights of Columbus. Have you ever heard of the Knights?" And I said, "Yeah, both of my grandfathers were Knights, but I had never thought of them outside of just being men that, you know, usher at Masses and have the swords and the tuxedos." And she said, "You should definitely join." And 2 weeks later I took my first degree, and the rest is history for me. It's the best decision I made at Georgetown.
Right. What's been your experience, like getting maybe like the lukewarm Catholics or even non-Catholics on campus, drawing them into these activities? Is it the service that kind of fires them up or excites them, or what's been your experience?
I think the service, I think the witness in general is what fires them up. I studied abroad this summer, and I'd go to Mass every morning before breakfast, and two of the girls, they weren't Catholic, one's Protestant, one's an atheist.
And
they
this
came
is
up,
at Oxford,
This
right?
is at University of Oxford, Trinity College. And I said to them, "You should come to Mass with me one day." And they thought about it, and they decided that they actually would go to Mass, and they went to the Oratory Church of St. Aloysius Gonzaga. And we were also over there this summer, and we celebrated the feast of St. Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, and many members of the community came to the celebration on Trinity College's campus to honor St. Ignatius, to learn more about the heritage that really underpins Georgetown as a Catholic and the oldest Catholic and Jesuit school.
Right. That seems like a great evangelization. So people kind of saw what you were doing and wondered what it was about. And then you said, "Come follow me," right? Was that
Not nearly as eloquently as that, but I certainly think that people see the Knights on campus. We have T-shirts, we wear the Knights of Columbus pins, and I think people at Georgetown wonder, what do they do? Who are they? And they want to learn a little bit more, and we're more than welcoming of anyone that wants to learn more about us and learn more about our faith.
You know, I think part of it is, especially young people, they want to belong to something. And ultimately, we all are made for God. And so when you see an attractive witness to the gospel, as Pope Francis says, but deeper than that, when we feel that call in our own lives and we see others doing this, we realize we're not alone.
Right.
And there's a powerful witness in that. And I think that the nights on campus can be one way that men can see that attraction, can join to a community, and then deepen their own evangelization. I know many of my former students who became Knights of Columbus who weren't practicing their faith. One of our buddies, Kevin, didn't show up to Mass until Palm Sunday of his freshman year, and then seeing Tom and meeting Tom and his invitation, he joined the Knights, and today Kevin is a very faithful practicing Catholic. And so I think we're one way that men can be evangelized and then can evangelize others through that witness.
It's a simple kind of offering that you put out to, and an invitation to join in this fraternity, or maybe a service project that might interest someone, that might pull them in, and sooner or later that young man, Kevin in particular, might find themselves attending a Bible study or having a conversation on sexual ethics or theology of the body, and talking to some of the women in the women's group about really what is lacking in the men on campus, and what they would like to see, and how that affirms their dignity as women. And this transforms you over time, slowly opening this conversation with men on campus, and then finding a home coming out of college in the Knights of Columbus, looking for that community in your local parish as well.
Yes, so the Knights aren't all about swords. There's something happens very early on. Maybe you guys can speak about that, about the rosary, the importance of the rosary in your life. I know, Father, you're a Dominican, so you preach the rosary, about the importance of the rosary, and maybe you guys can speak a little bit about that, about praying the rosary, about maybe the family, stuff like that. I think that's part and parcel with the Knights of Columbus's family life, the rosary. I know my uncle, who's a Knight, he has 14 children. They pray the rosary every night as a family. And it was really a witness to me of the importance of family life and the rosary. So
when you join the Knights, every night receives a rosary, and he's asked to carry it in his pocket. We won't put you on the spot, although Father, you have one on your hand, like I have it on mine. But the rosary and the Eucharist are really kind of the two foundations of our spirituality, I would say. And if you guys want to share an experience,
Sure. At Georgetown, one of my dear friends, Lewis, founded a rosary confraternity at Georgetown. And actually, each night we pray the rosary in front of a statue of Our Lady of Fatima, which is right on the grounds of Copley Lawn, right at the front of campus. And it's a place where many people will walk by and see, 5, 10 people, both Catholic daughters and Knights of Columbus, praying. And I'm sure they think to themselves, what are they doing and why are they doing it? And that's a question that will lead to another question. What is the rosary? And that's something that we hope to answer and to inspire people to pray the rosary.
You do that every night?
We do, before our nightly Mass. So we go from the 9:40 rosary to Mass at 10 p.m. to baked goods at 10:35. And on Wednesdays, basketball. So,
and that's in a case in working with our college councils, a lot of our college Knights will lead rosaries, or be the ones that are there on time to start the rosary, to offer that invitation, because I know just from being on campus, you never know who's going to walk through the door that knew there was a rosary or a Bible study, and you're there to provide that opportunity and that witness. And I'll offer one kind of example. This gets back to the relationship between the men and the women on campus. I met one young lady, one friend from school. She was on her way, rushing. Oh, I'm going to go to the rosary today. I'd say I'd be there, but I don't have mine. And so I took out my Knights of Columbus rosary that we've been praying diligently in school there, and I handed it to her, and she said, really impressed. She was like, thank you. And I was like, this is awesome. This is your Knight's rosary. Can you give this away? It's like, yeah, I'm pretty confident I can give it. I can get it. If you're going to use it, yes, I can give it to you. And she said later, she said, Tom, I was impressed. It was worn. You actually use it. You actually pray it. So it's a little bit of the accountability, but more recently, maybe a few past years, my fiance said she found one of my rosaries. She goes, Tom, here's your rosary. You left it when you were visiting, but I noticed something. It's like first decade's worn a little bit more than the rest. I think that was one of the indications that I had found the right woman.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment. Hey, welcome back, and we're going to go right to a promo video done by the Knights talking about the organization.
Game day at Notre Dame. It's where legends are born and champions are made. But the players aren't the only game day heroes for the Irish. Since 1968, Knights of Columbus Notre Dame Council 1477 has raised more than $1 million for those in need through the sale of steak sandwiches before all Notre Dame home games.
The steak sandwich sale, like many things at Notre Dame, is rich in tradition and lore. It began, I guess, in its original form in the 1950s as just a fraternal cookout for members of the council. Over time, the Knights kind of realized that we have an opportunity to, do something with, and so a fundraiser was born. And over the years, it's grown and grown, and it's been a part of some fans' game day experience for 35 plus years.
This steak sale it's such an iconic part of the Notre Dame game day experience. I always try to explain that to the new guys. This is as much your chance to be a part of game day at Notre Dame as wearing a golden helmet or marching down the field in the band.
Earlier in the week we start foiling the grills, prepping everything, ordering all of the steak and the drinks and the napkins and plates and everything like that. On game day is really where everything kind of comes together, lines hundreds of people long by game time.
For decades, the proceeds from the sale have benefited numerous charities, in particular, the Corvilla Home for the Intellectually Disabled and the Gibo Home for Children in Crisis.
The first principle of the Knights of Columbus is charity. I call it the baptism of blood and smoke. You get to be a part of the most powerful charitable force that we can possibly marshal as a council. And the fact that we've been able to raise as much money as we have, with as much passion and with as much fun as we do, it's a lot of hard work, but that's the essence of what charity has to be, a personal, direct involvement with what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
For the October 19th game against arch-rival USC, the Notre Dame Knights helped raise funds for the recently launched Knights of Columbus Stand with Boston program. This initiative is designed to provide additional prosthetic treatment beyond that covered by insurance or other programs.
A lot of folks who were injured in the Boston Marathon bombing are athletes, and while their insurance covers a limb that they can walk with, a limb that they can take a shower with, they may not have a limb they can swim with, or most of all, a limb that they can run with. It's a very special opportunity to celebrate the greatest intersectional rivalry in sports like we do today. It only makes sense that we'd find some way to give back.
Charity is at the heart of the Notre Dame Council and really at the heart of these steak sale programs. It may seem like we're having a bunch of fun out here and it's a great fraternal bonding experience, which it is. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is nothing short of a great charitable event that benefits so many here in our local community, throughout this country, and even around the world.
Okay, I think that's a good segue for the leadership program you all have. You all talk a lot about forming leaders for the future. In fact, Chris, that's one of your favorite quotes, isn't it? About
sure. College Knights are leaders of tomorrow. And that's something that really drew me to the Knights of Columbus, especially having been able to serve on the advisory board for College Knights. This ability to sort of learn how to manage something that you're passionate about. You know, you work in the world and you may not be happy with your job, but the greatest school to learn how to lead is when you're passionate about something. When you're passionate and you feel what St. Ignatius Loyola called the ability to go forth and set the world on fire, set it ablaze with love, to do what the Supreme Knight Carl Anderson titled his 2008 book, to build a civilization of love, to build a campus of love, and in our case at Georgetown, to build a hilltop of love.
Right.
For many of our college guys, joining the Knights of Columbus and taking an active role will be their first real leadership in the church. In a lay organization, and that's huge. And I can remember, for me, that was the case. And you know, Carl Anderson, our Supreme Knight, is fond of saying that for men 18 to 22 in college, their day-to-day choices will have more impact on their lives than a choice that I'll make now at 42 or someone will make at 60. And I think the Knights of Columbus, in terms of our leadership, part of it is by the witness, the example, having a community of brother knights who will support you in making those grace-filled decisions that we're all called to make, and that determines also vocations, you know, and so that's really, I think, at the heart of the leadership model of the Knights of Columbus.
So you're saying that there's a trajectory that's set in college, right?
People don't think about it, but it really is. Those choices we make in our 20s, we'll have in earlier.
I mean, these men, particularly, we just saw the video clip from our Notre Dame Knights, who've been going strong for over 100 years. That's no small operation that they run, and a lot of responsibility to keep that tradition going, but also the charities that have depended on their work and their success over the years. And to put that together as young college men, and Chris was talking about the conference that they put on, is real training grounds for leadership in the church. And a lot of times for the first time these men have ever seen.
I think that's so important too for our young people, that, you know, going away to school, you need really to plug in with a community, and something like with the Knights, where you have structures put in place. You know, people have been doing this cookout for how long? And you can plug in and give your time and energy and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to go reinvent the wheel or try to figure all this out.
Well, the support is there for you, and that's part of the great work that we're able to be involved in, is in supporting college councils like Chris's at Georgetown, and like the over 300 that we have now, but also after college, helping transition into parish life, setting up an alumni network for our college Knights, and as they transition into parish and family life and what that means, and being a constant support to you in your discernment of a vocation, but also a community of families at the parish level. You
know, there was a legendary pastor, Father Bill Nolan, who founded the Catholic Center at Dartmouth, and he said famously that for college students, the priest that they'll probably be closest to will be that chaplain that they had in college for the rest of their lives. That'll be the priest that they might call up, ask about wedding prep, or to come back and do the baptism for their children. But college is a specific time where it's really important, and I think one of the aspects of the College Knights of Columbus is our college chaplains. And I know for me, when I was eventually discerning the priesthood, it was my Knights of Columbus college chaplains who I turned to and said, you know, I've seen your witness. You know, how do I go about this process? And they were the ones actually who introduced me to the Dominicans and helped me on my own path. And I think that's another area where the college Knights are very important, is the work with the chaplains and the priests.
Has there been a number of vocations to the priesthood out of the Knights?
Certainly out of the Knights, and certainly out of our College Knights program. I think Chris and Father were talking at Georgetown. I think there's over 8 since of priestly vocations since the 90s.
That's right.
And certainly every year of our college leadership that comes to our annual conference, there's seminarians that were leaders on college, and then there's also men discerning on the campuses right now. I think 3 at Georgetown right now, and just opening the conversation. I would have never thought to go on a discernment retreat in college had it not been for my work in the Knights of Columbus, and then I went on a discernment retreat, and that helped me to clarify where I saw myself and actually discern marriage in a serious way.
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned the leadership conference, and there's a leadership program with the Knights. And
Right. Well, our college Knights program we view as an opportunity to grow leadership in the Knights of Columbus at the college level, and annually we have a college conference come to New Haven, the birthplace of the order, and all our leaders from the councils gather. And it really started out of the leadership on campus, and Chris was a part of our advisory board that's charged with putting on the programming and the seminars in terms of running programs and council membership growth and new opportunities. And in addition, every year the Knights has a management development program that I was a part of, and that's how I got into working at the Supreme Council, which offers the opportunity for college grads to come and rotate around the different departments at the Knights of Columbus. And then
like for a semester you would come in?
you would come out of college, rotate every 3 months around the company for 18 to 24 months, and then hopefully find a home in one of the departments. And I work in our fraternal programs and membership departments.
I like that boldness to form leadership. I hear that theme a lot among our Protestant brothers and sisters, but also more in the Catholic world today, providing leadership for the future to really go out and make a difference. And
not just for the future, but we're saying, you know, a lot of the saintly models that we have, we see up on the wall of the set. We have, you know, Pier Giorgio Frassati, of all these Catholic men and women that really gave their lives really young in those important decisions that they made. It's not just being leaders for life, but being leaders now where you're at.
Let's talk about the World Youth Day outreach, because you all had a great center, the Love and Life Center, with the Sisters of Life in Madrid.
Yeah.
EWTN, we did a lot of our programming out of that place.
Yeah,
Tell
you
us
had
about
some college nights on the main stage here. That was a great collaborative effort. Had other partners like Holy Cross Family Ministries, and everybody was able to find a home in this English center, this Love and Life Center, where we saw upwards of 100,000 pilgrims come through. The different gatherings of the U.S. and Canada and Australia also had their programs there. And this is an outgrowth of college nights actually going to World Youth Days for a number of years in different pilgrimages. And for the first time in Sydney, the Knights of Columbus decided to partner up and do the Love and Life site, and it was a catechetical and youth festival site. And then the opportunity came in Madrid to partner with other organizations and to have college nights actually work in service on site, you know, setting up, doing all the logistics, helping with the different breakout sessions. It was really just an amazing time to spend. And our college nights in preparation for that went on a pilgrimage ahead of time. And Father John actually led that pilgrimage and throughout what was St. Ignatius' country and the Jesuit heritage of Madrid and Spain. And
the connection with the Jesuits is, Father McGivney, though, was not a Jesuit.
He was
diocesan priest. Yeah. I think it just plays out. There's no one spirituality of the Knights of Columbus. And actually, since Father McGivney left St. Mary's, the Dominicans have had St. Mary's in New Haven since shortly after, so the Dominicans as well. And our college councils are on different campuses, public and private and Catholic, run by different religious orders. Yeah,
I thought that was such a great venue in World Youth Day, and it just speaks of the power that the Knights can bring in organizing such a great event, bring all these great speakers in. It could be a place for English-speaking pilgrims to come, and it was just a really fruitful venue.
And really provides a powerful event and site for deep conversations and conversions. You know, I was able to talk to people, you know, just attending Mass there, or the catechesis sessions, or talks that they had, or getting to meet their local bishop. This was a place for them to come and spend time. And then, you know, outside of the major papal events as well.
Okay. Well, Chris, we got about a minute left. Do you want to give a shout-out, invitation to college young men to join the Knights?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said before, the single most important decision, formative decision I made in college was joining the Knights of Columbus. I can say that without a single reservation. I would have been lost on Georgetown's campus without it. My relationship with our chaplain, Father Stephen Fields, is really powerful for me. And he gave a homily at our installation of officers Mass where he said that youth is for heroism, not for pleasure. And I think that's why we joined the Knights of Columbus, and that's why one should join the Knights of Columbus, to be a hero, to go out and be a witness for the faith and a witness to Jesus Christ. And I think that is fundamentally what we're all about as Knights.
Well, thank you so much. You're a great witness for service and faith in the church. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, may our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you. May He give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week on Life on the Rock.